Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today is a second-generation family business owner, and he's the president and co-owner of All Volleyball, Inc. He's a husband and a father and a philanthropist. So everybody meet my guest, Corey Lawson. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me, and happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. So when you and I met, we were discussing Amazon, and you presented a very unusual choice you made. So you own private label products in the volleyball space, but you purposely decided not to sell them on Amazon. So tell us why.
Well, it's a little counterintuitive to what most people, I think, that have a developer mature Amazon strategy do. But at the end of the day, we want to win the war and not the battle. And this is a very long-term play for us. And so right now, the season of business that we're in, the opportunities that we have to capitalize on, it just made more sense to leverage our ability to be a reseller on the platform and to build a long-term private label strategy.
So how long have you been on Amazon?
We have been on Amazon for about 5 years. We probably were tinkering around with it probably a year or two previously to that, but to be an active seller about 5 years, and kind of ebbs and flows of a strategy along the way. I think over post COVID was really when we really solidified kind of our mid to long term strategy on Amazon as a seller.
So you are a reseller. So you are sourcing products that you can profitably sell and then reselling them for other brands. That's the choice you made. And the reason for the choice is it, tell me one good reason that really why you chose that. What was the strategy as far as Amazon?
Sure. When we started selling on Amazon, a private label brand or brands was somewhat off, in a distant future. What we knew is that we had access to product that not everybody else had access to. And this was 5 years ago. So the world's changed a lot. 5 years ago, our ability to sell, Nike, Adidas, Mizuno, Asics, Under Armour, in the volleyball category, but even beyond the volleyball category, really was not exclusive to us, but certainly we were one of the very few sellers that concentrated on the volleyball category with access to those brands. And so, when we started on the marketplaces, we were a reseller, but our competition was probably 90% less of what it is now. So we were just taking advantage of green space that we saw, and we had access to the product. And that was something that a lot of, smaller sellers on Amazon didn't have access to. So, we kind of played the hand that we were dealt years ago. And, along the way, we figured out ways to continue being a reseller on the platform and winning. It gets harder every day. And that's part of a longer term Amazon strategy that's surrounded private label. That's why it is really important to develop.
Yeah, so you just hit the nail on the head. It gets harder by the day, right? Because you are competing. So there's a few things here. When I work with my clients, usually I ask them, how cash flow sensitive are you with the start of your operation? So I usually, and if they are private label owners, but they don't have a lot of resources, I always recommend a hybrid strategy, as long as they are able to competitively source products, because that's what it comes down to. So you can resell some of the products by sourcing competitively, which will give you immediate revenue. And at the same time, you could be focusing on private label. So, and I totally hear you. 5 years ago, private label was not as hot as it is now. It almost went all the way up, and now it's kind of coming down, because when it came all the way up, you had these aggregators acquiring brands. So now aggregators are, it's slowing down. But if you're building a brand, you've got a good product, you're going to be there forever. So tell me how you are able to, let's unpack this reselling business. First of all, you are in a space where you have well-known brands establish themselves, and they don't want unauthorized people selling it at a deep discount. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, we're dealing with it like many others, and that's as gracefully as possible. In short order, since we started selling on Amazon, our ability to sell Mizuno, Adidas, Nike, and Under Armour have all since been revoked. So we no longer are able to sell those products. That's where we started, and that's what we cut our teeth on. We still have access to those products. So we are a multi-channel retailer. We'll generate several $1 million in sales from Amazon, but that's a smaller portion of our overall revenue. We still have access to those brands and that product to resell on our website, but just not on Amazon. So that has shifted dramatically over the years. So, we now are in a position where we're sourcing and finding other products that's in our existing assortment, in our existing catalog, that we sell multi-channel, that we can sell on Amazon. And we think about how we, a pricing strategy, an assortment strategy, an inventory strategy is really going to set us up for success. And that's really what we're hedging our bets on right now. Post-COVID, it's just such a different world.
So you are pretty much subjected to what everybody else is subjected to in terms of brands disallowing sellers. And Amazon has deals with some of these major brands. They just don't let you sell anyway. You can't even list it. And I can see that. So that means that you are constantly sourcing or researching for products that you can sell and then buy inventory for it. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, it's not quite to that extent. Some of the business rules that we have around our strategy, our go-to-market strategy, is it has to be a product that our core end user, which is a volleyball team or club or an individual volleyball player, would find value in. So we start and end there. Our second step in that process is to make sure that it's not a product in our existing catalog that we're selling on our website or maybe offering to our teams and our clubs. It's not on Amazon. But yeah, Nick, you're right. We start with what do we have access to with our existing brands, and if we add it and we take an inventory position on it, because that's big for us, and that's one of our keys to winning right now in this world, is if we are going to buy, thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of product, we got to make sure that it makes sense for ultimately our end user, no matter where they buy it from, whether it's Amazon, whether it's our website, whether they just pick up the phone and call us. We have to make sure that that's a product that would make sense for them. But yes, essentially, we are looking at holes in the market, both just generally speaking, but on Amazon specifically. And then we go to work and work with our vendors to find products that might fill that void. And then we invest in them and we bring them in. We don't drop ship any products. We ship them all from here. And again, that's not for everybody, but that's just what's worked for us.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you are also doing your own fulfillment. So it's an FBM model you chose.
Correct. We have done all of it, but we've really settled on, a seller fulfilled, FBM model, for a variety of different reasons, which I'm, certainly, willing to unpack. But that just made the most sense to us. We did FBA for a period of time, but when we run the numbers, we understand how our business model works. It was just constant tinkering to see what the formula was, and ultimately, we're centrally located in St. Louis, Missouri, so we're a pretty quick ship to most of our market, and it just made sense that we would have more control over the product, in our own warehouse.
So share with us some metrics. For example, what I'm looking to find out is, I understand it has to be a good fit. So it's your category, it's products that speak to your customer base. What are the metrics? So if first of all, the item has to be on Amazon, right? It is currently being sold by other sellers or not.
Yes, it does. We have very few products that we own the entire listing for.
Okay, so that means that the product is out there. That means there is demand that you can tap into. So that's the
Yes.
good. So if an item is selling, what is a typical price point that speaks to you as far as your business model?
I mean, it varies because the assortment, although it's volleyball specific, it can be wildly different. But in general terms, I'll speak on the two major products that we sell and have a lot of success in the marketplace, and that's inflatables. So that's an actual volleyball that we sell, and the selling price for that could be anywhere from about $40 to $75 to $80 on average. The other big category that we sell is footwear, so volleyball shoes. And that's generally anywhere from about $70 to about $150 that the customer would pay.
Okay, so let's take the volleyball and let's call it $50. So in order for you to make money, first of all, since you are doing seller fulfilled, what does it cost you in average to ship that item?
Volleyball cost us, generally we can get away with doing first class mail. So it usually will cost us $3 on average. $3.
So that's about 8% of the sale. So you pay 15% to Amazon.
Correct.
So how much do you look to source that item for?
We're typically trying to, we look less about sourcing costs and more just about gross margin. And we're really trying to be over 50% gross margin for sales on Amazon. Again, like that number sometimes needs to be a little bit higher based on return rates and defect rates. Volleyballs, for example, very, very low return rate, very low defect rate. So, for all intents and purposes, after we sell a volleyball, we don't expect to get it back. And so our total cost of sale can be lower because we don't have to account for everything that, a return or a defect, especially on Amazon, can cost you. Shoes are a very different story. It's that, for us, it's the highest returned item. And it's very, very challenging to really understand what the formula is for success. But generally speaking, just at a high level, we do the quick math. What's our average shipping cost? It's either going to be $3 for a first class package, or let's call it $10 for a priority or a UPS shipment for a shoe. 15% off for that, Amazon gets their cut. We're really targeting if we can be over a gross margin of 50%. So if we buy a shoe for $50, if we can sell it for $100, our operational capacity shows us that we can be profitable on that. But again, shoes are much less, so we obviously are betting on value, and we're betting on margin play if we can own the buy box and really drive up that that volume and that margin, and then obviously just dealing with the returns as gracefully and efficiently as possible.
Yeah. So let's look at good because yours is a very good case study. It's kind of doing surgery on this. So as a business model, so where I'm going with it is not actually profitability, because for the listeners' benefit, there's a whole different set of dynamics with reselling products. So 50% margin is, frankly, because I when I was an Amazon seller, I was also a reseller. So I didn't build a private label. My years at Amazon, they were way before. So there was no private label. It was basically, source profitably and then sell.
Sure.
So 50% is sometimes maybe 40% if you have a really good deal and then you buy quantity and things like that. But let's say 50%. 15% you pay Amazon, and then you're right. So it's best to estimate like priority shipping. Then you're gonna be probably around in average, because you pay different rate depending on where it's going.
Sure.
And the weight. So let's call it $10 like you did. So that's 20%. So now 50 plus 20 plus 15. So you are up to 85%. So you have 15% left. So on a $50 sale, you have 15% left. So let's call that $5. How many of those do you sell a month?
Yesterday, so 10,000, 10 to 15,000.
50,000. So let's call it 25,000
No, sorry, 10 to 15,000 of that specific product.
pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's call that 15,000. So 15,000 pieces, $5 a piece you make. So that's 75 grand net profit you make.
Hmm.
How much inventory do you carry at all times when you buy? How much are you buying?
Well, tough question to answer because the majority of our sales aren't from Amazon, and we service several different markets. But at any point in time, we've got about $1.5 million in inventory here. I would say about 25% of that is not necessarily earmarked for Amazon, because we don't really reserve any product specifically for that marketplace unless it's, generally speaking, we don't. So I would say on average 250,000 is probably a reasonable number that we would need to have on hand to be able to have the volume and the sell-through that we do.
Okay, so now that this is for the listeners' benefit, this is the ratio. It's a huge metric. A lot of sellers don't look at it, and that's really where they win or lose in terms of cash flow. So in your case, you are selling $75,000. You're generating $75,000 liquidity every month, but you're carrying $250,000 worth of inventory at any time. That means it will take you 4 months almost just to make enough money to finance that inventory that you have to carry. So if you have multiple SKUs, and most resellers do, you really have to be prepared for this kind of cash flow situation, because you need to be, if you don't carry the inventory, your sales will slow down, then your cash flow will drain. So it becomes a catch 20 situation. And then the danger in this is suddenly prices start going down because somebody starts playing the buy box. It becomes race to the bottom, which is my next question. How often do you experience that?
It happens. So I want to back up just a second to maybe help the listeners clarify, like something that might be specific. It's specific to us, but it might be helpful for them. There is a kind of a 4-month churn that we look at. Like, Nick, you're correct. Really, we try to get a little bit more simplistic than that. And so what we look at is, we have multiple SKUs, and we do have multiple brands and partners that we work with that we're buying this product from. We've worked really hard at negotiating generous terms from them. So many of them were on a 90 to 120 day term cycle. And our whole goal is to buy it, sell it, and pay for it before that invoice comes due. So for us, it is about a bit of opportunistic margin play, because we will win a buy box, or we will win a buy box, and our margin will drop drastically, and they're very, very profitable. But in a lot of respects, this is about cash flow for us. We're a very seasonal business. We focus 100% on volleyball, and volleyball really is played, kind of 6 months out of the year. So this is a way for us to add extra revenue and really deal with cash flow. But we really look at it as, with this specific vendor, if we get 90-day terms, our goal is to, buy it, get it in, sell it, get the money, and then pay the invoice before, be able to pay the invoice early, essentially, or pay it on time, so we're not out. So I just want to clarify that real quick. Nick, your question about how the race to the bottom, because we've worked really hard at developing a mature strategy, we have a floor. And some products, based on the way that they're moving, how quickly they ship, the defect rate, but it's, again, like, we're former athletes, we're jocks, so we're not the smartest people in the room. So we don't have some really complicated formula. We just understand that there are certain products we can go a little bit lower on, certain products we won't. But having another couple channels really help. So if we don't feel like selling our volleyballs for below 50%, we just cap it, wait for Amazon or somebody else to run out, and then we'll be there when the next batch of customers are. If it doesn't sell on another channel, if we sell it on our website for the same price, or sometimes we actually sell, our margins are actually less on our website than they are on Amazon, for a lot of different reasons. But we look at the customer acquisition and the customer relationship as something that we're willing to pay for. But at the end of the day, like we don't compete greatly on price unless it's a really, really strategic decision. We can or we need to. Otherwise, we determine a margin that makes sense for us, and it's generally around 50%. If we go below that, we just don't compete, and we just wait as long as we need to until the environment's different and we can compete again for that sale.
Well, I just heard you say, frankly, from business standpoint, playing this game, the most valuable thing, and that you have other channels to float the inventory. So, I mean, that's a huge advantage. So, again, for anybody who's looking to do this, this is a dangerous game to play. I mean, you are strong because you have multiple channels and you have good relationships. But if you weren't in the position that you are in, I would warn against the dangers, because you can buy, because you know how these suppliers are. They will always want you to buy quantity, right? So they will, when I was doing my own selling, I would, I had good relationships, but they would always give me these sweet deals. I'm going to drop the price, just buy this many, buy that many. And of course you buy it because you want the price. So plus you want to carry the item. So, in the end, you lose the buy box. Suddenly you got inventory you're stuck with. So it's a dangerous. And the most important thing here is the metric that I talked about. It's liquidity, how much liquidity you are generating per month and how much inventory you carry. Liquidity versus inventory ratio is key, because that's when I tell people, if you ever feel like, I don't understand, we're making money on every sale. Our sales are growing month over month, and we never have any money. And that's because your liquidity versus inventory ratio is not as healthy. Now, the credit terms are good, of course. It's again, for someone starting, there was a challenge that I had, because at some point when you grow, you start to push against your credit limit that they assign your account. So now you're doing very well, and then you buy, say, 10,000 pieces at a time, and sales have grown. You are in the buy box, and suddenly you place an order for 30,000 pieces. It's sorry, your balance is going to take us over the limit. So now you have, so it's like you're constantly juggling. So my question, I see you're shaking your head. I'm imagining you experienced the same challenges, right?
Sure. Yeah. And we, in my opinion, doing this, I've been in this business for well over 10 years, creeping up on 15 years. In e-commerce, Amazon not as long, but the rules of the game aren't much different, and having really, really strong vendor relationships, it's critical. I mean, it is maybe not so much pre-COVID, but as inventory has shrank, their credit lines, the distributors or the manufacturers or the third parties that you might be sourcing product from, their credit lines shrink. Whatever the case is, like, those relationships are critical, and that does happen, and it generally doesn't happen with any type of warning. So being able to have a strong relationship with whomever you might be buying that product from, or if you're 100% private label, the factory or whomever that you are actually purchasing a product from, it's critical that you have a really strong working relationship, because a lot of times they can work with you on some extensions or whatever the case is. But we talk a lot internally that the whole story is not about the selling price, the margin, and everything the customer sees, or the economic unit of the sale. A lot of it starts with, are you buying the right product from the right vendor? And we think really hard about that when we develop the strategy.
Yeah. So you said the word, which is a good segue to the next subject, private label. So what are your plans for selling? Because you do have your own label, right? So yeah, you are a registered trademark. You have a registered trademark. So do you plan to put that on Amazon at any time?
Sure. We We've tested it a bit here and there over the last few years. I think long term, I mean, honestly, I mean, you can probably see my face. I don't know yet. We obviously love the idea for a lot of different reasons: sales, market research, just understanding like what is hot and relevant in the market. But there's also some brand protection that we want to be really careful about. So I would say if I had to make a decision now, I would say yes. I would say that it probably wouldn't be a separate assortment, but we would be a little bit more careful about the assortment. And one of the things that is important to know about like our specific private label strategy right now, it is a team product first, meaning these are jerseys, they're spandex, they're warm-ups, they're bags that are specifically built and manufactured for teams and clubs to wear. There is demand at the retail level, but it's really a club first strategy. So we have to be sensitive to making sure that there's inventory reserves there and that we're really ultimately taking care of that customer. So the answer is yes, in some way. I think part of our success as a reseller on Amazon has somewhat hindered our plans for private label. If our back was against the wall, we would probably be a little bit more aggressive about the strategy. But it's allowed us to be a little bit more thoughtful about how to position ourselves. And I say this with respect to anybody that might be listening to this. We are in this for the long haul. And so we are thinking, we don't think a day or a week or even a quarter at a time. We're thinking years ahead. And so we want to be really thoughtful about what that strategy looks like. And so when the time's right, we will start tinkering around with it. And hopefully that'll be in the next, 24 months or so. But we think if we can figure out a true multi-channel strategy, both for a B2B market, a team or a club, and an individual, I think that's really unlocks like a big, big opportunity for us. But we're a small company, we take small steps, and we're gonna do that as we feel ready.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of the strategic actions you can take to protect your brand before you start selling. Have you put your brand on Amazon brand registry?
We have not yet. We will. We are actually the private label brand. We have one right now, and we're in the last leg of all the IP that will hopefully, we're in the review period right now. So once we get that taken care of, that's really the brand that we think could do well on Amazon if we choose to go that way, and we will take those steps for sure.
Okay, so we're recording this in August of 2022. Roughly about 6 months ago, Amazon relaxed their rules to invite brands into brand registry. They no longer require you to have the trademark. As long as you have your serial number assigned to your application and your application is in progress with US Patent and Trademark Office, you can be invited to brand registry. So therefore, that's something that I recommend every brand. So that's fact number one. Fact number two is Amazon and Google have an agreement where a user goes on Google and does a product search. Amazon serves up the product results. So what that means is anybody listening out there who has a trademark, either in application or they already have the trademark registration for it, go on Amazon brand registry, because anybody who is looking to buy something, they'll pull up their phone and then they'll search it. And the next thing is the results are coming from Amazon. And if the brand is not on Amazon, then it's not going to show up anywhere. So when the user or the consumer does not see the brand even show up in Google search results, this is not about selling, but this is actually establishing your brand presence. Then obviously it limits your visibility. Then lack of visibility leads to lack of credibility and so on and so forth. So that's why I always tell brand owners, forget about selling, building your listing optimization. That's a whole different path that you have to go if you want to set up a private label sales operation. However, establish the brand presence, make sure that you have that, because what can also happen is this is the other danger for brands. If they are not on Amazon, Amazon is not going to stop anybody from creating a listing. So they can take your items, submit your brand as a brand, submit a UPC that they may register for. So now you've got a listing on Amazon that really you have no control over when the time comes for you to do something. So I actually had a client, they sold masks. This is before COVID. And I'm talking about like woodworks and, cleaning and that kind of stuff. So they were very strong, but they chose B2B route. And guess what? Amazon was littered with listings of their products. And it was a big problem. They could never, and it takes months if you have a fairly sizable catalog to actually take over. You can ultimately take over the listing because Amazon won't let you change anything, or then you can merge ASINs, but it just becomes such a complicated thing. So I always say, just go on Amazon, get on brand registry, create your listings, and just close them down. Don't do anything. And that way, you've got your presence, you secured your future, and when you're ready, you can start your work to build the sales operation, listing optimization, and things like that. So there's a little bit of a tweak there. How do you create a listing when you don't really optimize? You can do things a little bit, but it's a bit of a fine point. But either way, I would highly recommend that.
It's great tip. Thank you.
Yeah. So great. I mean, I can see, I introduce you as second generation family business owner. So it's a responsible thing to have the long term. So I always, it's always, you never know, right? In the leadership role, you have to make a decision and you don't know whether it's right or wrong. So right now, I can see you juggling your long-term health of the company and the brand against, well, there is an opportunity here building private label, because then you're building equity, really. Right now, you're building cash flow, but then you'll be building equity, and there is an opportunity to build that now because there's demand. What do I do? That's a tough decision. So it's something that you have to do.
Yeah.
So let's now step back and talk about the whole Amazon strategy in general. And so what do you see? Why should somebody be on Amazon? What do you see as the biggest opportunity?
I'll speak a little bit from my perspective and my background. Every business is different and their priorities and objectives are all unique. Here's the number one piece of advice I would give anybody that's thinking about it is just make sure you have a good reason to start this journey, because it feels like there's a garden hose that can open up with cash and opportunity. It's really dangerous. So my number one piece of advice is just make sure that you have a plan and have a vision for how you want that to work. Even if it means just you want a product, you're trying to do a product market fit for a product. I think it's just really, really important to have a set of clear expectations that you need to go in with, because the reality of living in an Amazon world is no matter if you have private label or not, like you just don't have a lot of control over so much of the outcome. I mean, there's lots of stuff that you can put into it, but at the end of the day, like you're in a big system. And so if you don't really understand the destiny that you're trying to create, short or long term, Amazon will create that for you. And that might be good or it might be bad. So, I would always just say, start with the end in mind. And if your end is, I don't have a 10-year vision or a 5-year plan or a 3-year picture, what do you want next quarter to look like? How much money do you have? What are you trying to gain from this? I coach a few other small businesses, family businesses, and they're in the retail category, and they're really trying to understand what that world looks like. And the success that they have generally starts with, they start with writing down 1 to 2 sentences of what they're looking to accomplish. And you'd be it's really surprising to see how much that will inform a lot of the decisions that you make, moving forward, because it can be an expensive game to play.
Yeah. So it's so funny. A lot of people, they want to build a business to make money, right? So
Right.
to make money, be their own boss, and have time for your family or for fun, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't quite work that way. You end up working much harder for less money. And that's because you don't have a vision. You have to, I always say, don't focus on profit, focus on value. What value are you building?
Right.
So if you focus on building value, money will come, because profit, cash, money, these are not goals. They are just metrics that measure how well you're doing whatever you're doing. So what is the value you're building? So that's why I always say, I had a guest a while ago. So this actually is a good model for you, for anybody listening. There's a lady by the name of Kia Hagen. I would highly recommend her episode. This lady was passionate about dogs, rescuing dogs. So what she did, she created a foundation to rescue dogs, and with her own money. She's not raising money or nothing. And the next thing is, like, she has no money because she's funding the foundation and doing a great job rescuing dogs and everything, loves the work, but she's constantly struggling. And somebody said to her, why don't you start an Amazon business? And so you know what she did? She created her private label for pet products. And that started funding the foundation. And in the meantime, she's building value. So she focused on building value. And in the process, she actually had her foundation funded by the Amazon operation. At the same time, she doesn't have to worry about competition or anything. But I guess that's the longer road to travel. But that's what she was doing. So that's always a good way. And you're right. It's a dangerous game to play, because Amazon will fill the vacuum that you create yourself. My biggest, the easiest example is, everybody who sells a product must have either an SKU or SKU or item code, whatever you want to call it. You have to assign one. That's the identifier. Everybody has Social Security number. That you are a record somewhere, so you have to have an identifier, and that's called a SKU in inventory world. And a lot of companies who don't really understand it and didn't think about it, they don't have SKUs. They just have names.
Right.
So guess what? If you don't have a SKU, Amazon will create one for you, and then you're stuck with it forever. So, these are the kinds of examples. So tell us about your team a little bit, the kind of operation you're running with basically buying and selling. What does it take to run an operation like that? And describe to us the roles in your team, as well as the kind of systems you are using.
Sure. So so let me first, just high level, when I talk about my team, this is a team with multiple responsibilities. So I want to preface this with it. The resources might not be as great for other Amazon sellers if they're specifically selling on Amazon, or they're not as, the size we are. So we're about 30 people, $11.5 to $12 million in sales, about 20 to 25% of that comes from Amazon. So the team that is responsible overall for our merchandise, our marketing, both on our website, multi-channel, we have a team of 1, 2, 3. So we have a manager that oversees e-commerce and Amazon strategy, a strategist that focuses on, kind of the paid acquisition side, both on, just on Google and on Amazon. So that's 2 people. We have a merchandiser that really just focuses on product creation, maintenance, health, and just overall merchandising, both on Amazon and our own website. And then we have a creative director or a creative, content lead who really spends time on just the less on Amazon, but we're certainly getting more into that. And especially as private label becomes more of a thing, we'll really need to leverage that. So it's a small team of 4 that do a lot. And again, like remember that they've got other responsibilities and other channels that they have to serve. And that's backed up by a team of probably 2 to 3 dedicated fulfillment people in the back that are shipping, receiving, receiving product, pick, pack, ship, and then receiving inbound. So I'd say our Amazon team, so to speak, is about 5 to 7 people, and then shared responsibilities with other parts of the company. And we certainly have other people in the warehouse that do different things, but that level of volume, you're going to need about 2 people dedicated full time.
And how about systems? Do you monitor the buy box and adjust your pricing automatically?
We do. So we were using, we started with Channel Advisor many years ago. We switched to a company service called Seller Active, and that was most recently as we've consolidated our strategy. So when we started with Channel Advisor, we were, eBay, Amazon, Walmart, and then really any other marketplace we could sell on. And as we've grown, we've consolidated those. So we're now just on Amazon. So we just leverage their tools, their seller, their Seller Central tools to, compete for the buy box, because it's not as much of a priority for us. So we are an inventory first right now, post COVID. We are an inventory first strategy, meaning we're less concerned about winning the buy box and more concerned about having the inventory. The buy box is a byproduct of having the inventory. So I think if there's somebody that's really, really focused on, the buy box game, then, really thinking about those tools that you're using is really, really important. But so right now we're just, for the buy box specifically, we use a lot of gut intuition, internal reporting, and then the tools that Amazon makes available to us. And then we do our backend systems we use NetSuite as our backend system for our ERP management, and then ShipStation for all of our outbound shipments that we would use.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The buy box strategy is the direct result of your inventory. So you need to know. So for the listeners out there, if you are reselling, it's critical for you to know at all times if you are in the buy box or not. And based on your overall strategy, if you choose to be in the buy box, you need to be adjusting your price. That doesn't mean adjust your price always down. You can actually win the buy box by increasing your price. Because let's say, for example, Amazon cares about customer experience. Customer experience means the best price, best seller. So if somebody is not such a good seller, but they offer the cheapest price, well, guess what? They're not going to win the buy box. And it all comes down to the rating of the seller. So they have a great algorithm to calculate who is the best candidate to win the buy box. And therefore, sometimes it is possible to win the buy box by increasing the price. However, I will say to you that prime sellers will always win against FBM sellers, because Amazon knows that if it's FBA, they're going to provide a much better customer service.
Yes.
So therefore, that's a choice. I used to play that game all the time. I built a whole platform. So there are repricers that people use. I mean, you have to use repricers because it automates. However, all these repricers lack one piece of information that they cannot, by design, they cannot provide. You have to put that in. They ask, what is the minimum and the maximum price that you're willing to go down to or go up to for any product? And that's the key piece of information, because it can be moving target all the time. For example, if you have too much inventory and you want to dump it, then you want to lower your minimum. If you have limited inventory and you're doing well, then you want to raise the minimum. So that's a moving target that I always caution again. So, don't just think that repricer is going to do it. You're going to have to feed your minimum and maximum, and it's going to go according to that. It's going to simply say, okay, lower it as far as the minimum. So those are the things to consider. So tell us about some of your, I know you said it's a long-term strategy. If you were to start private label tomorrow, what would be your first action other than the brand registry that we covered already?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Private label tomorrow, outside of registry. I would probably, I would say, let's say, for example, we have the product here, right? Unless that's what you're asking. So if we're talking about brand registry and we're talking about like we have the product built and in our warehouse to ship, I would say the priority would be building those branded pages or building the listing page. You get to own that. And, the way that we look at branding for us is we have 26 years of reselling another brand's product, and we're really good at it. But we also know that won't last forever, or in our business model, it will be a blend of both. We know that. But having the ability to control the branded experience on Amazon, I think is a huge, huge opportunity, because, ultimately you might just want your brand to live on Amazon forever, but you certainly want to start building it if Amazon goes away or changes the rules where it doesn't make sense for you to be there anymore, that you're building enough brand equity that they can find you in other places. And Amazon does have some really nice tools that it can tell your brand story. So I would focus on that. I would focus on the content, the creative. I think some of the tools that Amazon gives you or that are out in the marketplace, you can really understand what you can sell the product for. You obviously want to know your numbers and your costs. But I really think if it's a private label brand, I get a little frustrated when I get on social media and I get, a million different ads about launching a business on Shopify or Amazon in 2 days, and it's so easy to do. It's not.
Yeah.
If you want to sell, garden gnomes and, I don't know, cute plastic cups, that, of course you can do it. But none of us should be in that game. Certainly not for the long haul. So I would say just really focusing on how do you bring your brand to life on Amazon? It's a bit of a tough road to hoe. It takes a little while, but that's why it's such a huge opportunity. You can do it well, and you can invest the time and the equity into it. There's huge gains. And what we've learned in our short experience doing private label is once you get some brand affinity, you really get a lot of opportunity with that customer, and they really stick around for a long time. It's a much more sticky relationship than if you're just reselling a product. So I'd say long answer to short question is I really focus on how the brand can come to life on Amazon.
Yeah. So I saw a presentation a while ago, and this is when things were shifting towards private label. And I heard a line in it. It was so true. Amazon does not want anybody to come to Amazon and just to sell on Amazon. What they want you to do is they want you to build a business.
Yep.
So what that means is you need to build your own following. So you're right. If you are going to start a private label business on Amazon, you need to be focused on building your content, so establish your presence in a way that will communicate the message that you want your brand to communicate. However, alongside that, you also have to be building your following. In other words, create a community of influencers. So anybody who is you are in a perfect space. Actually, it's unfair to give you as an example because you by design you have a lot of followers, right? So because you work with teams. So, but if somebody's starting from scratch, I would say get a number of influencers who have YouTube presence, or they have their community of people who are interested in what that influencer does. These days TikTok has huge following. So build that following for your brand before you go on Amazon. So if you do that, that's a huge advantage, because the first thing you do when you launch is you want your listing to rank up. How is it going to rank up? It's going to rank up because it has reviews, and the reviews will attract orders. You're going to, of course, do PPC and everything else. But now think about this. If you have that following and you send out one mailer and say, we just launched our Amazon listing. Here's a coupon code for you. Please go place an order and give us your honest feedback. They already know you. So some of them will place orders. Immediately you will rank up. And if you do it the right way, in terms of inviting them to place the order, by using the keywords, you will rank up for specific keywords. And before you know it, within a couple of weeks, I've seen these listings dominate those keywords. So building that following as well as the content, they go hand in hand before you launch. Otherwise, you're going to be relying on PPC only. That means cash you have to be spending. So it's not always the best. So tell us, if you could wish one thing for Amazon to change in their policies for third-party sellers, what would that be?
Oh, just one? Okay. I shouldn't say that. Amazon.
I know. It's a long list always. Yeah. Whenever I ask this, people.
Yeah, and to be fair, before I answer that, I don't like Amazon has been a blessing for our business, and it's, it's sometimes it feels like you're sleeping with the enemy. It does, but we owe a lot to them, and they, and at the very least, what I tell our staff and anybody that wants to listen to me. Especially when I speak about this or work with other clients, other family businesses that I work with, is, the only thing Amazon does is it challenges us to raise our game. Sometimes those expectations seem unrealistic, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be striving for that level of service or operational efficiency. So, having said all that, the thing that is hardest for us, and again, like this is a reseller, this isn't private label. Is just dealing with, the returns, and really Amazon is such a customer first business. Again, we appreciate that, but sometimes it makes that a little bit more challenging. And so if I can give you just a really quick specific example, our shoe business, it's huge on Amazon. We sell millions of dollars of shoes, but we also get hundreds of thousands of dollars of returns. And many times these shoes are unresellable. They return them for the wrong reason. There's just a variety of issues. The challenge that we have is there's no way that we can challenge that, or more importantly, what can we do to teach the customer about this product specifically? If you don't loan that listing, you're kind of blocked. So that world it's a big challenge for us, and we wish we had a little bit more flexibility on how to. We wish the option wasn't sell it or not sell it. Right now you sell it and you deal with the ramifications of selling a product that has a high return rate. And there's really no gray area. Again, private label, you own the listing. That's why the brand and the content and the information that you provide the customer is so important. Because if you can get that return rate, and that defect rate below 5%, it's kind of a game changer. So that would probably be the one thing I would say is just if we're a reseller, how do we have a little bit more of a voice or a way to educate the customer about certain products?
Yeah. I mean, I remember my days. We kind of set up a return process. We were doing our own fulfillment, and anybody wanted to return anything, we would ask them to get an RMA and all that stuff. Because as an FBM seller, you can make your own policies. But you know what I found in the end? It just was a losing fight, no matter, because they created that culture, buy it, return it, and some people abuse it. It's just one of those things we have to do. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So you mentioned you are in St. Louis, Missouri, in Heartland, so to speak, I guess. So tell us, so where did you grow up? Did you always in Missouri?
Yeah, born and raised here. It's where the company headquarters are. We've got a few remote employees, kind of speckled throughout the country, but, been here the majority of my life, Midwest. I was in grad school at West Virginia University, East Coast-ish for a while, for a couple of years, but made my way back here. And, we love living in the Midwest. I think most of our staff's young. I'm 42. I'm the second oldest person here. Most of our staff is in their 20s and 30s, but they've had their wanderlust, but they're realizing the value of being Midwest. So always been here, always will be here. Not to say that we won't continue having remote employees, but this will be where we're based for as long as the company's around.
So I have a question for you. What was it like to work for your dad? I guess you work for your dad, right? Since it's family business. What was that like?
It's challenging. It's, my mom and dad, my dad started the company. My mom joined them, a couple years after the company was formed. That was 20, going on 27 years ago. My parents are still active in the company. They don't have a leadership role. They leave the running of the business to myself and our team, but they still come in. If they're not traveling, they still come in. This is their hobby. This is where their family is. So it is challenging. It is really, really important that you work closely with that first generation or that generation of succession to make sure that you help them understand what their vision is, because a lot of times they don't know what it is, and you work really hard to help them achieve that and make sure that they're a part of that. And when we do that, it's great. When we don't, sometimes it gets a little bit challenging. But I've always been lucky. I've had a good relationship with my family. I'm not so sure how well family businesses would work if the bedrock of your relationship isn't strong to begin with. We've been really fortunate that we've been close outside of this business, but there's more laughing, crying, arguing, and more emotions than any other type of business, working for your dad or mom. There's no doubt about it. Really comes down to, do you embrace it or do you run away from it? We chose to embrace it.
So, we all care about employee satisfaction, right? So when it's your own family business and your dad is the boss, he doesn't have to care about your satisfaction, right? So you're there no matter what. So that's a bit of a disadvantage compared to other employees, I guess. Would you say?
It is, but again, I think you don't get to pick your dad, but you get to pick your boss. And if you're in a family business and that's the culture, I can't tell you that I would endorse working for a boss like that. So I think a people first strategy, a culture that's really important, whether it's family or not, I think is critical. Nepotism is real. Family business, there are different rules of the game, and that certainly can't happen. And just being really cognizant of not only the effect it can have on like the second generation, but more importantly, everybody else that sees it going on at the company. It's really dangerous. Family businesses, it's a pretty dynamic. Most of the small businesses in the country are family businesses in some capacity. But that's also why business is so hard. Is that it's not just about the X's and O's. A lot of times it's a people. It's managing human energy.
Yeah, I mean, you just said something that I always emphasize. People say, "Oh, we have a totally different relationship. Between me and my dad. He treats me just like anybody else, and I treat him like a boss or whatever." But how about the dynamics that other people have? Because they are seeing, no matter how badly you behave, and even though you are just an employee, they know that there is a relationship between you and the boss that they don't have. So it's frankly, it puts a lot more of the burden on the son or the daughter who's working in that family business, because they need to be able to juggle their relationship with their coworkers as well as their dad or mom or whatever who's running the business, and you don't actually get to choose that, right? So it kind of falls on your head as something you have to, and you don't necessarily realize that's the case. And so do you think, I'm just asking out of curiosity, working for dads is usually hard because they have high standards. So do you think that makes you a hard boss?
I don't think it makes me a hard boss in terms of my relationship with my other staff. I think it makes it harder for our staff to understand the world that they're living in. Anytime a family business, a son or a dad says, I treat them just like an employee or I treat them just like a boss, they're full of crap. That's impossible to do. So there's always family dynamic. It makes it harder for our staff because they witness that, even if it's behind closed doors. So me personally, it doesn't make me a harder boss. Sometimes it makes it harder to work here because our employees that we do everything we can to treat like family, but they're not. And so they see some of those things. So you got to be really cognizant of it. But at the end of the day, I think that's a leadership choice that you have to be able to make. And if you have a good relationship with your family, that it sows the seed to have a good relationship with your staff, but it's challenging nonetheless.
Yeah. It's hard to be in a family business. There's all kinds of dynamics. And you don't get, there's no school, you can't go to school, right? You just have to juggle it.
Yep.
So this was great, Corey. So you've given a whole different perspective for anybody. I think you've highlighted how to successfully run an operation on Amazon if you're reselling, and also in family business. So this was great. So give us your contact information. How can people find you and connect with you?
Sure. I mean, the easiest way, the two easiest ways is just to email me. It's, Corey, Corey at allvolleyball.com is, that'll get to me, and I'll generally respond within 24, 48 hours. You can search me up on LinkedIn. It's probably where I'm most active. My social game's not great. So you can find me there, but I am pretty active there, at least responding. So just a quick Google search, Corey Lawson, volleyball, you're going to find me. Feel free to reach out, any way that you can. And, I'll generally be a pretty quick response.
Great. So all your contact will be on our website and with your episode. So anybody who wants to reach out, they can do that through that. So thank you, Corey. This was great. Thank you for appearing today.
Great. Nick, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. And that brings us to the end of another episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.